The Morning After is a really strong film, and there are some interesting things on Wikipedia that I want to share. I haven't fact checked it, but there are some things there that I thought were quite fascinating as well. This was released in 1974. It's directed by Richard T. Heffron, written by Richard Matheson, based on The Morning After by Jack B. Weiner, and we have a cast including Dick Van Dyke as Charlie Lester. And Lester is a public relations writer, and he seems to be doing really well for himself, but he has a problem with alcohol, and that's what the film is about. And needless to say, it's heavy. It is a really heavy film. It is not the easiest watch, and I genuinely got really emotional and really teary eyed at this. There are a couple of times when Lester really displays a lot of really strong emotion to the point where I wasn't expecting it. I expected some emotion, of course I did, but this was just completely unexpected, and it was so powerful. And Dick Van Dyke's performance is absolutely incredible. And according to Wikipedia, and this is completely new information to me, in fact, I'll read what it says. To quote Wikipedia, around this time, Van Dyke admitted he himself was an alcoholic and he'd been seeking treatment, in brackets, one of the first celebrities to do so. I don't know how accurate it is that Van Dyke was one of the first celebrities to admit to being an alcoholic and seeking treatment. I don't know how correct that is, but I had no idea that Van Dyke ever was an alcoholic or ever admitted to this, so that to me was new information. And I feel like, on the one hand, that would make this performance all the more real, all the more brutal. Do I think it's the right role for Van Dyke to have played at that time? Well, that's not for me to say, but I feel like it might have been really raw and really challenging. And maybe it could have been cathartic. Maybe creating a film that shows just how devastating the effects of alcoholism can be would have been beneficial to him. But on the flip side, it could have been something that was quite triggering. Obviously, that's absolutely his decision to do this film, but I just found that to be quite interesting. And yeah, I didn't know that about Van Dyke, and I love Van Dyke, and it was eye opening. And according to Wikipedia, and again I quote, today the film is still shown in some treatment centres. And I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. If that's true, if this film is still shown in treatment centres and can positively impact somebody's life, that's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. It is such a strong story. Yes, there are times when the narrative dips a little bit, the quality's not at a high all of the time, but I feel like we do need those moments when the narrative maybe slows down a little bit, or the emotions maybe aren't as raw. Otherwise, I think it would have honestly been an impossible film to sit through, because it is so powerful and so effective, and from my perspective it seems very believable. I have no personal experience with alcoholism, so I can't say that it's completely how somebody would respond in this situation, but to me it seemed believable. If anybody has any thoughts on that, please feel free to share. And yeah, learning more about Van Dyke was, I guess, bittersweet. It's certainly an interesting film, and I definitely recommend it. I will say it could be triggering, it could be too challenging to watch depending on your headspace, your personal situation. But if it seems like a film for you, if it seems like a film you could watch, and indeed if it seems like a film from which you could benefit, absolutely I think it's worth watching. If, like me, you're just looking for an interesting story, of course I recommend it. If you're a Dick Van Dyke film fan, Dick Van Dyke fan, then yes, I of course recommend it. But in the same breath, I have to say that it's also not the easiest watch for a Dick Van Dyke fan. And then, of course, with the added knowledge of what I learned on top of that, it's not easy, but it's absolutely worth it. I have honestly nothing but praise for it. I think The Morning After is a really strong film. I hadn't heard of it. I didn't know what to expect going into it, and yeah, it made me feel a lot of things. Powerful film, definitely one that I recommend if it seems like the right film for you and you're in the right headspace for it, or you could benefit from it, or you're just looking for an interesting story. The Morning After is definitely worth watching.